All right. All right. So here we are, the rapid reaction to Hogan nationally. This day should should be compensated for a lot not just people from my skin tone, of all people. Especially if you're around my age, kind of range maybe from if your range anywhere from maybe like 38 to 48, maybe that teacher period, I'm 43 myself, so I fall right in the middle. That 30 48 range. Oh, Hogan, if you're in this range, Hogan probably your guy. Grew up watching your host. He was your first hero. Oh, your first hero. Put something out on Twitter just I was out with my mother at her doctor's appointment. So that's why this rapid reaction is maybe like an hour and a half, 2 hours late than it normally would be if I was at home. It would have popped up on question when I was watching. Uh, yeah, so it's very. Yeah, he was like your first. He was he was just incredible, and yeah, I he's going to be remembered for all the stuff that has happened in the last decade. In fact, I saw on Twitter that said this day in 2015 was the day that the whole lockout stuff came up. Not lockout. But it's when the stuff came out with Gawker, and it was a sex tape that had the racist rhetoric on it. And then here you are, 10 years later, on the same day, I was hoping, unfortunately, passes away. I'm going to read a couple things here, and then I'm going to get into my thoughts, my opinion on everything. From things to wrestling legend Hogan died at 70 years old. Medics were dispatched to the military icon Clearwater, Florida on early Thursday morning with operators stating that regarding a cardiac arrest. A video of the scene outside Hogan's residence shows responders trying to save his life as he was transported to an ambulance. Oh, God. They actually have it here. And cameras everybody, everywhere there. He's being taken out. He's on somebody's on TikTok. And he's on wow. In the clip, several paramedics appear to be conducting checks on the person as open and wheeled to the emergency vehicle. Cops tell us officials responded to the call at 9:01 a.m. and was treated by Clearwater Fire and Rescue personnel before being taken to a nearby hospital. He was pronounced dead at the hospital. Police provided additional details at a press conference April 3rd. Just a few weeks ago, Hogan's wife Scott, who was married in September 18th, denied Hogan was in a coma, stating his heart was strong as he recovered from surgeries. We broke the story last month. There were rumblings Hogan was in his deathbed, but we were told at the time he was dealing with symptoms of a neck procedure he underwent in May. Hogan transformed professional wrestling to family entertainment sport. Before Hogan, wrestling catered to a fairly narrow audience. Ultimately, athletes in the ring were magnetic with children and their parents, and superstars of sport. Hogan started himself with the Phenom, ultimately after defeating Iron Sheik World Heavyweight Championship let's make that compare the WWE championship because he's it now. You can report the championship about we thought they won't get over. But no, it was the WWE championship. They crazy. They never went into that by fans crowd in 1996. Hogan transformed himself from hero to villain. He created the NWO all in the local and it built him personal wrestling into more play. Hogan had countless iconic performances. His record run down by wrestling at 18 in 2000. Now, Smith was founded and WrestleMania 3 and has had numerous warrior and Bolt was inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2005. Who after they scandal with Thomas while he was doing a system Walker hosted clip subsequently to Wayne Austin. What was inducted at the same time for the Hall of Fame as a member of the new board. The WWE released a statement of Hogan to the fans from the recognized figure. Hogan helped to achieve global recognition for the United States. Did it extend those to Hogan's family, friends, and fans. Hogan was the star of 2024 Republican National Convention. He set the room ablaze with his guy. Hogan had an amazing career in 1982 playing the iconic character Thunder. He also started both for Suburban Commando and Mr. And then Hogan starred in the hit V1 reality show Hogan Knows Best. His family Linda, Nick, and what's amazing about Hogan, he had scores of surgeries as a result of wrestling. He told Harvey during a taping of the Object 5, he had no body parts left. Now, Harvey is Harvey Levin, the owner of TNT, and we can get to that quote later. The last time we spoke to Hope back in May, he was launching Real American Freestyle, amateur wrestling league. The first event is August 30th on Fox Nation. The story is still developing. Rest in peace. Hogan will start with I-30. There was Hogan was dead. He posted on Note on X and February of the North Best thing earlier. Hogan and very Hogan and struggled issues back and up in the real American Hogan headlined the first ever to pick on Roddy Piper and Hogan's words match unnecessary three new fights around 80 Hogan was in the main event of 7 first television uh, television, including the syndicated Thunder in Paradise in the 1990s. Hogan won the WWE in 1996, Hogan put on the biggest heel turn in wrestling as a second act, working for WWE considered a world championship wrestler in WCW. Hogan became a master, leading the vast group of invaders out of the world. So heel turn, as a great guy, and a wrestling the WWE Hogan this black and white, rather than trademark red and yellow, which is like beginning in 1996. Hogan returned to the WWE in 2002 to face the Rock and WrestleMania in Toronto. His character was the NWO bad guy version, but at 68,000 not interested in moving. They cheered him over the Rock. Then the biggest good guy forced Hogan to return home to Florida that weekend to pick up his old red and yellow shirts and trunk. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2005. After his wrestling career concluded, Hogan had been employed in 2015 as a racist. He didn't terminate his contract at the time, so brought him back 3 years later as an ambassador, which speaks frequent television appearance. Hogan appeared on the Real American Beer. So, it was all in uh, I wasn't able to so again, it's part of like this hour have so, so okay, so those are articles. See, one more thing, there's those Twitter react right left to this and stop. Share about the past. Hopefully, about our fact we started in the rest of the incredible athlete talent our friends in the world to be always there for me even when I didn't ask them. Even first visit, first I was be brave about that. No poster, no, never rest yeah. Rudy's beefcake. It was the good times and the bad. I love my brother Terry. I'm devastated by the loss of my friend. I only wish we had time to mend our broken friendship before this passed. Until I see you, brother, in the big square circle in the sky, I love you. Triple H. WWE would not be it is today without the larger-than-life characters that compete in the ring. Few, if any, women larger than Terry, Hulk Hogan, the man. He was the archetype of a big superstar, a global sensation that inspired millions to work hard at whatever they wanted to accomplish, and the looks that made him recognized as the Hulk Hogan, clad in southern yellow, white, middle, black, and white, 50-foot as a real American or at least one of the biggest facts. He transcended and elevated the entire business to heights never before in every country and on every continent. No one knows like the host as there will never be my family and those who get them friends and fans. Sting, Hulk Hogan, the greatest of all time, the greatest of all time. Can't thank you enough for all that you did for me and the rest of me. I love you. I will miss you, my friend Terry Bollea. Hey, Hulk Hogan was a dude that was fortunate to work there a couple of times. Because he do a full impersonation. I'm like, millions of my got away. I practiced it in the era 1,000 times. And what it is that Kane is itself. It's shortly after the WrestleMania 18 match with the Rock. You know, the drug lord said he was in the building, turned his face, and Rock, Rock and Rock and Hogan was going to against the NWO, and Kane in the year Kane because first and 60 against all that Xbox. In this video, one of the he did doing the rock stuff, he was doing Hogan stuff, and it was like uh, technically, it might be makes really count. But it says hard to put in words with Jerry play a immense impressive record. The history, 8 songs, and legacy will live forever. Rest in peace. There was Matt Hardy had one. Rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. Terry Bollea was the first main but he was the face of the and elevated pro wrestling for a long time. I had the opportunity to work with Hulk a few times over the years. My strong experiences are with his family, friends, and fans, especially out in Florida, telling to hear about the past of Hulk. I guess God needed a better place. Teammate. Uh, I am standing to learn of the past of the progress of Icon Hope. Always name was synonymous with professional wrestling, transcending the industry to become an American pop culture fiction. My condolences goes out to his fans, friends, and family. Rest in peace, Carlos Silver, Team A president. There was one that I saw when I was coming back home from Charlotte Flair. That was what I wanted to read. Please that is here with the past of my friend, the rest of that Terry Jean Blair on the bench was more than an icon in the ring. He was he was he was a man with a big heart and a genuine desire to help us. He was a cross supporter of my school program, champion choices, and was willing to defend whether it was whether it was a recording a promo of help others with children or signing the autograph for student attorney. One of the loyal to his character was he took the guy personal call my friend, the other friend, who was battling cancer with his spirit. I believe this great not just person, but a great rest in peace for always be. So here's one from the Bears. When I was a kid, I ate my vitamins and said my prayers because Hulk Hogan told me to. He was someone I looked up to. Like president. I copied constantly going. The voice, flexion, charisma, he made you to be bold, loud, and confident. Rest in peace, Hulk Hogan. And I really want to try to get this one from Charlotte Flair. Um, I don't know. So let's see. Yeah, so I'm going to go to Twitter account. Charlotte. When I nearly lost my dad 18 years ago, who cared for it all? So my heart breaks like an brother. Rest in peace, brother. So, in talking about this, like, I don't know, I don't comment or anything like that. So this is 20 minutes. We're gonna go however long it takes here because we're gonna talk about everything here. Um, let's talk about without question the controversy. Let's talk about the controversy. Make the controversy positive. As it as it was spoken, and like I mentioned, I think it's 10 years to the day when the golf came out, and Hulk Hogan spoke of that. He and his daughter dating, and I got some here from I think I was talking to John Stapp. I don't know Stapp put it on his Twitter account. Hulk Hogan must have been both physically and physically. That's a it's not understood. One of Hogan's primary concerns was that he and his family would be reincarnated into a black family due to karma. This was caught on audio. When he came back to WWE, he hit the roster with a "Be careful about cameras" as opposed to star. So that last part is something to talk about. That thought. The, the NWO company, um, uh, like I say, that is, yeah, just look at the fact that, you know, that's what all, well, no, not all, there are a lot of there is out there, you know, but stuff that some folks can say, uh, I don't, I will say this. That's, you know, hey, what was the last, um, but you're white, right? Yeah, my, was it okay with your, no, that is the truth of the story. I don't much about it because I was thinking to the stuff, the stuff, anybody there, I could really cry over the fact that people is lost. This is perfect. It's also perfect like talent. But I'm crying. But I think it's very important. Right. Kind of like that. I can't hate in my heart. I think that's something I never just had so great that was showed from that video wasn't the fact that he was using the N word. It was the fact that he was upset that his daughter was dating a black. That's the race. That's the real race. Why the fuck are you upset? Your daughter dating someone black. Why are you so upset? Again, you are so upset that you are venting to your deeper think about it, and it puts that venting you using you take it. Some but Sean Ross taps it. I don't know if I remember this or not, but about the he was. I know a lot of people doing that kind of because but Nick Hogan, he used to race cars, like that. Like if that was riding, but he was so quick, he was going so fast that he had an accident that almost took the big, big, time. And he said he had been arrested. He started with the wasn't like manslaughter. It was like one of he was charged with like stuff. Off. He was found not guilty of that. I think I remember other more that as well. And I don't remember this comment that the thing saying, but it says it's on audio, so that's what it is. You just you are. You're feeling it. I keep bringing back to the thing with uh, but it's yeah, that's it. And then like I read in the article, on Beverly, I was saying, you know, got they removed him from the Hall of Fame. They started so yeah, yeah, it, was, and just look like like perfect player. And that was from the front. And to do the apology, things like that. And apparently, when he stood up in front of the locker room, instead of a heartfelt apology, using that for having this thing for me upset that my my daughter was dating black. That's not who I am. That's not who I want. So whatever. I apologize for those actions and I hope that my actions to prove who I am, who I am, the real terrible lady. Prove that, as John and Sean said, he kind of said, well, you know, why gotta watch out for cameras? You know, important. And that's why there's a lot of things like this. Um, and there's a lot of black people that are not give him the there are many black people who are really dancing on the grave. A lot of white people dancing on the grave. I wouldn't do that. I'm not going to do that. I wish they wouldn't do that, but they have some reason. There was this one thing, and it's actually it's an incredible thing. There was a Hall of Fame. I can't remember what year, but the way they had the Hall of Fame set up and the cameras set up, you could it was an interesting, and you could see like New Day, all three of them, Wood, Xavier, and both people. They put it in the camera, and most of them they have a brand on their their dance, their graphics, their different other things that happen. They're doing what the New Day would do. But I forget who does it, or who, you know, they remember it, but it was so open, and they Coco came out, the New Day stopped, and they not only did they stop saying versus what they wouldn't be able to perform at the time today. Also, they were not like being very just they were I forget what the record was depending on something like that. They spoke at that the fact that they were doing stuff, right? And kind of what it is with Hogan and was and you know recently he has been a big supporter of Trump. He spoke at the Republican National Convention. As I read in the TMZ article, that just turned off some people as well. Again, I would say me as well. You know, for as much as I try to, be okay with people voting the way they vote, it can't, but it can't just be like, why you should wear it back? That's it. But yeah, stuff like that. And just also, like, you get it. There's a lot of and they have just said, the last all of this, all of this, one, like. So somebody wrestled for 400 some days because he would wrestle in Japan at one point, and he would fly to California and wrestle. So because of the time change, he thought that he was wrestling 2 days. That's how in a year that's 365 days. He wrestled 400 days. You know, I would advise you to share on YouTube, search TRIPLETT live. Sure, there's a live. Okay, so I will apologize if you've been hearing music for the past 30 minutes. I apologize. I thought I had paused or muted some other music. So I've been going for about almost 40 minutes, and if you've heard that music for the last 30 minutes, I am so sorry. I truly apologize. I thought I had stopped everything. So yeah, and then this year it finally seemed like enough was enough for the majority of people. Hogan came out there on Netflix to promote his beer. They booed him, and they massively booed him. So much so that again WWE, who has been like a sponsor or something of this Real American beer, they were going to have Hogan do more promotion on television, but they stopped that, and now on Netflix he has commercials on Netflix talking about his Real American beer. So all of these controversies, all of these things have put a damper on what has been an extremely massive influence in life. And you wonder what's going to happen tomorrow night on SmackDown. Because this is Hollywood Hulk Hogan. This is Hulk Hogan. With all due respect to Bray Wyatt and to Terry Funk, um, but they were out there on the SmackDown after the loss of Bray Wyatt and Terry Funk, paying their respect. They were out there on the stand, and they did a 10 bell salute. And you have to wonder if that's going to happen Friday. Are they going to give people the option not to do it? I think they are obviously going to mention them. I think I think you know. Are you going to have something where there's going to be bullying if they do that? I don't know. Tomorrow's probably one of the most must-see SmackDowns in a long time, in a very long time. Probably since now I won't say since the Bray Wyatt Terrence passing, but I would go back to even since the when the whole stuff with Vince came out, and then they were going to announce that Vince was going to start SmackDown. Probably the most must-see SmackDown since then. So that's the stuff about the controversy. The stuff about Hogan's career. And it was a massive career. He started in the AWA. I think he may even started before that. It may have been in Vince's father's WWF. He may even started then, and then he went to the AWA. And he was in AWA, and he was a big thing. And then Vince started to poach from all of the things, and he poached several people from AWA. He poached Mr. Perfect, uh, Gene Okerlund, Bobby the Brain Heenan, and Hulk Hogan. Poached all of them. And when they were doing that, that thing in was it 82, 82, 83, whatever it was. Um, they decided to go with Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan was the right guy at the right time. And I think if Vince tried that with anybody else, it would not have worked. But it worked with Hogan. And then, of course, that led to like Hulkamania and WrestleMania 1. And the story there is that Vince and Linda put up like their mortgage or whatever for WrestleMania 1. And if it didn't work, they were. If WrestleMania, that's the biggest what if in wrestling. If, if, if what's his face, if WrestleMania 1 doesn't work out, what happens to the World Wrestling Federation? What happens to Vince McMahon? What happens to Hulk Hogan and all of these other wrestlers? I mean, would we still, 40 years later, would wrestling still be like territorialized? Or would have Jim Crockett Promotions just went national? If someone else would have been went national, would have been, who knows? But WrestleMania was the biggest success again, partly because of Hogan, and we know what happens after that. And he's the biggest star. He was the main event of WrestleMania 3, the second biggest show in the history of WrestleMania, um, attendance wise, the second biggest attendance record in the history of wrestling. He's got and there's so many other things that went down over. And then into the late 80s, early 90s, the steroid stuff started to come up, right? And the steroid drop. And Hogan went away for a little bit. WrestleMania 8 was going to be Hogan's last WrestleMania. He main evented that one with Sid. Um, but then he came back. And in WrestleMania 9, they did the whole thing with, him. Well, Yokozuna beating Bret Hart at WrestleMania 9 and him coming to save Bret Hart and and then beating Yokozuna, winning the title. And many people say that many people have hindsight on that because they say, well, that shouldn't have happened. That shouldn't have happened. It nobody that's not what nobody wanted. Really? Because if you watch WrestleMania 9 and you watch that, there's nobody in the crowd going boo or nobody in the crowd going like this or anything like that. They're cheering their ass off. Why? Because it's Hogan and he just won his fifth title. And there was a scandal after that. He was over in Japan and he said something about he said something ridiculous about the WWE championship and basically putting that down over in New Japan, Richard obviously like that. And then what was going to happen was Hogan was going to lose to Bret at SummerSlam. He didn't want to do that. He didn't want to lose the smaller guy in Bret. So then they went and he lost it to Yokozuna at the King of the Ring. And again, he quote unquote retired again. And then WCW came calling. And he went to WCW. And he was there. But again, as the ESPN article stated, times were changing. And people were getting a little bit smarter, and also they wanted something more different. They just didn't want the true. They didn't want the out and out white meat baby face that Hogan had been playing forever. They wanted a little bit more with the baby. They wanted a little bit more edge, and not edge the wrestler, just edge as in like whatever. But they wanted something a little bit more kick to it. So when he was in WCW, he had to get to WCW, things like that, but he was starting to get some boos here and there. And apparently, at one point, what they did was that they had Hulk Hogan be a baby face, but he wasn't wearing the red and yellow. He wasn't wearing the yellow. He shaved his mustache. He was being a little bit more darker character. And again, depending on who you talk to, that was a that was like a pre-heel turn. They wanted to see, how the crowd would react to a kind of heelish, a more heel turn Hulk Hogan. That didn't last. So that lasted a couple of months from it being in all black. When you went back to the red and yellow, and then of course we get the whole thing where Nash and Hall jump from WWE to WWF, and they're doing the Outsiders thing. And there's many documentaries that talks about this. And again, still because you never know what Hulk Hogan tells you, things like that, because he's willing to lie about anything. Either it was always going to be Hulk Hogan. He was always going to be the third man. He was always going to turn heel, or he had reservations about whether or not he wanted to do it, and he made his decision about whether or not he wanted to do it or not when he walked down that ramp. That's when that. So you never know. Whatever it is, however it happened, it was the biggest thing. The biggest thing in wrestling at that. Hulk Hogan turning heel. This the decade plus of him being the beloved babyface. He's now the villain of the story, and it popularized WCW like no other. It's the reason why people watch WCW more than WWF. And it was wild. Now, to all due respect to WWF, they were starting to do some stuff as well, and thankfully because of they have, you can say they have Hall and Nash, thanks for that as well, because of the curtain call at Madison Square Garden, you know, in which the heels, Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Kevin Nash, were with the baby faces, Michaels and Hall, the Razor Ramon. It kind of shook up the thing because it was Triple H. It was Hunter Hearst Helmsley was supposed to win the 1996 Royal Rumble, 1916, and he was penciled in. But because of that kayfabe breaking moment, and Hall and Nash are now going to WCW, Michaels is the WWF champion. You can't punish him. We can't punish. It's Triple H. So he doesn't become king of the ring. Steve Austin becomes king of the ring. Bada bing, bada boom. Basically, the Attitude Era is confirmed and created with those two events. Austin win the king of the ring, Hulk Hogan turning heel. And we had so much greatness during that Attitude Era. And people will tell you, if you go back and you look back on that Attitude Era, it wasn't that great. Well, see, people nowadays, they look at it from different areas. We, growing up in the Attitude Era, we wasn't looking at it as we look at it now. We wasn't looking at it as, oh, great matches or 5-star classics and, oh, can he break the star rating and this and that. We wasn't looking at it as we look at it now. We were looking at it as it was entertaining, and it was entertaining. Yeah, sure. I talk about this all the time. From SummerSlam 1997 to Survivor Series 1999 when Steve Austin made his return. Steve Austin kicked and punched and clotheslined and Luthez pressed and kicked chairs and Stone Cold Stern his way into everybody's hearts. So you go back, those matches are probably not classics because he couldn't wrestle. He was wrestling with that stuff with the net. And he wasn't wrestling a classic wrestling style. He wasn't doing the stuff that Kurt Angle would later go on to do, and Chris Jericho and Eddie Guerrero could go on later and do. He wasn't doing that again. but it was entertaining as hell. And the stories were insane. It was crazy and it was beautiful and it was great. Um, Maybe some of the stuff with the with the ladies and with the Braun Pennies matches and Mr. Man saying the N word and get to John Cena. Yeah, maybe some of that stuff is not is problematic these days, but it was still a great time to be alive. And Hogan was a big part of it over in WCW, and he was fantastic. And then when WCW was bought by WWE and they brought in the NWO, everything changed. And again, and then you mentioned that the WrestleMania 18 match with The Rock. It's one of the greatest matches of all time. And again, is it something that you done today? No, it's not something that you would see today. It's not gonna be Rhea Ripley and Io Sky from Revolution. It's not going to be Seth Rollins, CM Punk, Roman Reigns from WrestleMania Night One main event. It's not going to be CM Punk, Drew McIntyre, Bad Blood, Hell in a Cell from last year. It's not going to be that type of match. But the atmosphere from the crowd, the story that these two got, and how they kind of turned it on in, and how Rock kind of slightly started going heel in that match and turning in, becoming Hogan, becoming babyface. The way that was done was beautifully executed, and it's absolutely amazing. I have a list on this match, which I have to do the list over. I have to do the list over because I did the list of the top 10 WrestleMania matches of all time. Um, and I did that before these last three WrestleManias because hell, the tag match with the Usos and Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, Cody Roman won for WrestleMania 39. The tag match on Red Night One WrestleMania 40 with Roman and The Rock, which is Cody himself, and then Bloodline Rules, Roman and Cody, two, and then the main event match from this year's on Night One. They're all 5-star classics, and they all deserve to be on that list. So at one point, I'm going to have to do that list over again. But anyway, going back to that was just that was a pretty epic match from those two, and then that came around, and Hogan was doing all the stuff. Because of that, they put the title back on Hogan. They put it on it from a month. They gave it to Undertaker and things like that. But there were a lot of things going on with that, and then obviously they have all of the things that they talked about. The Hulk Hogan man had so many makeups and breakups. It's insane, and there was so many things. There's the Hogan Shawn match from WrestleMania 6, where again Hogan was pulling his shit, and it was supposed to be like a 3-match thing where Hogan would win the first, Shawn would win the second, and I don't know who would win the third. Again, you talk to many different people, they're different stories. And then Hogan said, that's not going to be enough for me, brother. We're just going to do one match, and I'm going to win." And because Shawn said, "Hey, fuck it," he just fucked in that match all over it, and it's just the silliest thing. Everything he oversells everything like crazy. Like when when he comes up the rope and gets hit with the boot by Hogan, and he falls down, he gets up, twirls, and falls down again. It's insane. It's also insane how bloody Hulk Hogan is in that. Like that match didn't need blood. It didn't need that much. So and that's one thing you can probably say about Hogan too. He wanted to go in that route. Hogan was he was a damn good blade man. He was a damn good blade man. Apparently, he would always talk about he would have the blade under his tongue, and he was able to get it. And he always, when you look for it, you see it. But if you're not looking for a blade job, he was epic at it. He would always like do the blade before he would get hit with something, so that he would be bleeding, so that he wouldn't have to go into the blading position and cover his head and things like that. I don't know how many times Triple H and Vince McMahon in the Attitude Era get hit with something with this insane. But yeah, but he was a tremendous blader, and he would do it, and he would do it so that it didn't feel like it was happened. And so he was so good about this. And let's also talk a little bit about like Google Hulk Hogan in New Japan Pro Wrestling or All Japan, whatever. Because if you think about it, many people would say Hulk Hogan couldn't wrestle. I think in one documentary, Luther said Hulk Hogan wouldn't know a wrist watch from a wrist lock. Maybe he wouldn't, but I tell you, he could, because he so much money he made, he would have like 3 Rolexes on his wrist watch or wrist lock, whatever. He'd have 3 or 4 gold Rolexes with all that money he made. And that's stuff that he didn't do. He didn't need to do that back in those days. He got beat down. He made his comeback, body slam, boot to the face, leg drop, 1, 2, 3, send everybody home happy is happy. It's Hogan won. And that's all Hulk Hogan needed to do. Now, unfortunately, because of that, Hulk Hogan, for years of dropping a leg on somebody, it hurt his hip, and yet, of course, he had so many hip injuries and things like that. He once said that if he could go back, he would make his move. He would make his move to sleeper hold, because he wouldn't have to do he wouldn't have to bump on his ass every night. So and have so many problems with his hip and with his back. And another thing he claimed, you know, is that he claimed that because of so many years of doing that leg drop, that he went from being 6'8" to like 6'4". Maybe, but more or less, the real question is, you was probably always 6'4". You were probably always 6'4", Hogan. We know that basketball and wrestling, they fuzz the heights a little bit. So you were probably always 6'4". You were probably never 6'8". But yeah, uh, I spent almost an hour talking about this, and once again, I apologize for the first 37 minutes. If you've heard music over me talking, it is what it is. But we are going to end this here, and here's how I'm going to end this video. Because of the racist rhetoric, because of all of the lies that have been told, because of his Trump supporting, for me, the last decade has been a complicated one when it comes to Hulk Hogan and my fandom of Hulk Hogan. But without question, without a doubt, he was my first hero. He was the reason why he was one of the main reasons why I started loving and watching wrestling. And he was one of the main reasons why, to this day, I still am at 43 years old, still watching, not missing a show, watching Raw, watching SmackDown. I was never gonna. I said to myself, I'm not. I don't need Netflix. I'm never gonna get Netflix. But WWE went to Netflix. I gotta get Netflix. Because I need to watch my wrestling, and my wrestling fandom is because of him. And many others after him have cemented it, like The Rock, like Austin, like Michaels, like Roman Reigns, like CM Punk. Those many have maybe cemented my fandom as a wrestling fan, but it was because of Hogan. There's no doubt about that. So on this day when Hulk Hogan dies at the age of 71. I can do nothing but say thank you. Thank you, brother. And as he would say, he would end some of his speech, much love, HH, much love, AT. My thoughts and prayers go out to the family, to the friends, to his friends, and to the fans of one of the greatest of all time, Hulk Hogan. May he rest in peace.